Hey everyone, so here I am with the Cion sitting on the super cheap tripod that really can't hold up the amount of weight that it has, especially sitting off-centered. Anyways, so here I am with the Cion. It came in, all of the things that I ordered came in so that I finally was able to get some footage out of it. But I want to get you guys up on what I've done and what I've ordered to get this thing up and running. Now, quick disclaimer, I started out super bare bones because I really don't know if I want to invest a ton of money into this right away before I get to see a lot of the footage out of it. And I want to try to fix a couple things with it and learn the workflow so that I can make the right choices on what I really need to do with it. So the first problem I needed to solve was how to get a lens on it. It has a PL mount, which is completely unadaptable unless you have medium format lenses or you have a lens that's small enough to fit inside the total diameter of the lens mount. If you look online, you can find adapters to put M42 old school vintage lenses in a PL mount system. Now, what I haven't mentioned on this channel before is I already have an M42 lens set. I already have a Mir 1B, I have a Helios 44-2, and I have a Jupiter 9. And I love those lenses. I use those lenses on every wedding that I film. They look so great, and I just love using them. And ideally, I would use them for everything that doesn't require a super sharp, clean image. And the good thing about this camera is that it's not going to deliver an overly sharp, overly clinical image anyway. So I figured those two things work really well together. And an adapter for M42 to PL, I found online for $19. Now, I had to do some things to this mount to make it work, and it only works with one of my three lenses. The Helios 44-2 is thankfully small enough that it fits within the adapter. And the last required thing I needed to do in order to record was either decide, am I going to record internally or externally? Recording internally requires you to use a proprietary AJA pack drive. Now, if you look at those drives online, they're expensive. But I was able to find a listing on eBay for a set of two 256 gig drives for just over $200. And I also ordered a reader for it as well. So I spent probably $300 just getting memory for this thing. But all in all, right now, I'm happy with the 256 gig drives. And to be honest, those drives are extremely robust. They work perfectly. They do exactly what they say they're going to do with fast read and write speeds. And honestly, they are the heaviest duty thing that I've ever worked with. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and put everything together and let you see this thing kitted out. It's super bare bones, but it's enough to get filming. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add the lens onto the camera. So we'll rotate this around. Got the PL mount cap here. Got an exposed sensor, and that's never good. So we'll go ahead and add this on here. Now, if you look closely at this adapter, you can see it's a little chewed up. Well, I had to do this to fit it in. I don't know if it's the adapter is a weird size, or this is a weird size, or they just didn't match up just well, because this was too thick to actually fit inside the lens mount here. So what I had to do was I shaved this down, and I've since polished it to try to get it as smooth as can be so I don't damage anything and nothing comes off into the sensor. But it's not ideal. And I think I'm going to be looking for some of the, I think they're called the improved M42 to PL adapters that will let my Mir 1B work, as well as maybe isn't going to require me shaving off part of the adapter. So this just goes right in there, and it's a very tight fit. And I have actually had some times where it gets stuck and doesn't want to work. I'm doing it this way because it is so tight and I don't want to damage the lens trying to get it in there. So I'm just gonna make sure that's in nice and flush and lock that down. And now I'm gonna screw the lens onto it. So on here, I've got a 77 millimeter step up ring on the end because I've got 77 millimeter ND filters. And I have a little focus gear system, not even for follow focus because I'm not currently running that, but it's so tight in here between the actual PL mount and the focus ring that it just helps me actually use the focus on the camera. So we've got the focus figured out. Now let's work on the power. So I've got a cheap GVM V-mount battery. At the end of the day, it's not the greatest in the world, but it works. So we're just gonna put that on here. And I feel like this battery plate was damaged at some point because this little latch that locks and unlocks it, that little latch right there, when you push it in, it just stays in and you have to manually pull it back out to actually put another V-mount on it. So that's not ideal. D-tap to 4-pin connection here. We're just gonna throw that on right there and plug it in there and do cable management later. Pack media that are honest, they're so solid. Like, I feel like I could throw this. I'm not going to. I was a little worried at first about the little pins here. I was a little worried at first about these pins being exposed. But honestly, it's super flush and they're recessed. So you'd have to be really careless or really trying to hurt it in order to actually damage these. Now, if you have any horror stories working with these yourself, let me know. Best practices. Honestly, if you have a case that you've used with these before, if you own any of these that you would recommend, I would love to hear it. Just slides. You use the name goes forward towards the front of the camera. Slide that in, and you have a working Scion. So I posted a torture test with the dynamic range of this thing, where I gave it the worst situation ever. In honestly a situation that my S5 with two extra stops of dynamic range would also struggle with. And so I wanted to see how it would handle the situation. I put it in the worst case possible for a camera with lower dynamic range than you'd like, because I wanted to see how the linear gamma actually worked. Now, if you can tell with the camera, I have not talked about a monitor situation. There is a very tiny monitor on the side that will let you see what you have in frame, but honestly, it is so hard to tell if it's in focus or really if the exposure is right. Just because it feels like it almost looks like there's something damaged in the screen. I just know that there's not. Now, I have a Blackmagic Video Assist. I can throw that on here. And what I'm going to be doing in the future is doing a comparison between ProRes internal on this versus ProRes internal on the Video Assist. Now, this is the old version of the Video Assist. It's a 3G version. So I don't know if there's an update for B-RAW in there. Right now, it's just DNX HD and HR in there. But what I'm going to try to do is just see where is the color space information. How is that going to be affected by recording internally versus externally? Being a linear system, I'm really curious if we're going to lose information in the same way that you would lose information recording in Rec 709, but really delivering in Rec 2020 or anything like that. If you are filming in a way that has less information, can you still manipulate that information externally versus internally? So I want to play with that. I know that the linear gamma is really just a gamma curve after the fact. So all cameras record linear. However, before it's actually recorded, they apply a gamma curve to it to make it log. And so that's why in the test, I was able to take the linear footage and convert it to RAC log, or log C. Got to be careful with that. RA log C and actually get some of that dynamic range back that wasn't visible in the original image. You could see, and I'll play the clip here, you could see that it looked like there was no information in the shadows, just with the naked eye. But then you can manipulate it because it is linear. You can manipulate that lower half of the histogram up and get that detail back. Now, that is within reason, though it still didn't look great. Some of those shadows, you can get details out of it, but they're still really mushy. There's not as much detail as you'd like. It's not sharp in that space. But that could also be because I didn't have a monitor to actually get the focus right. Can you take the linear footage with 12 stops of dynamic range and convert it to vlog and have it look as good as recording internally vlog that I love in my S5? So I'm going to be comparing those. There are some gamma transformations that you can do to do that. So I'm very excited. I think the next step here is, one, try some recording externally. I think that's going to be what I do next. I'm going to be comparing 1080 to 1080 because the video assist, the 3G, only records 1080. So I'm going to be 1080 to 1080 and all the flavors of ProRes that come baked into both. And from there, I need to test some skin tones and just see how this thing really looks. I don't have a ton of time right now to put into this, so bear with me. I work full-time at a church and then part-time at another church. And so it is right before Easter if you're watching this right when I post it. And so my hands are a little full right now, trying to hold it together and edit a bunch of weddings that I've been doing as well. So it'll take a second to get some real tests out of it on skin tones. But I'm really excited to get those because from what I've seen out of this camera, it actually looks pretty good. It's not a horrible image. It doesn't have nearly as much latitude or wiggle room in the edit as you'd like, unless you're doing all these conversions and losing some of the detail that you would expect to be there. That's one of the problems with recording in linear and converting it to log. You just don't know how much detail you're actually going to be able to recover and how usable that detail is going to be, unless you have a way to have a color space transform in a LUT, or figure out a way to at least be able to preview what that transformation is going to look like. And that is coming in another video. And other than upgrading the camera and purchasing things to go on it, because that's expensive, I'm also going to be fixing a couple things on it. There are some missing screws in certain areas, and if you take a look, this knob right here, notice you press it in, it comes out, and then you press it in, and it goes back in. Well, these knobs right here, these gain knobs for the audio inputs, are supposed to do that as well, and neither one of them actually presses in and unlocks or locks in. So I want to be fixing that and see if any of that is related to why channel 1 isn't working. There is some damage to the channel 1 XLR port. It's missing the lock here. And so I'm going to try just replacing the port. If I can do that and I can fix it, well then, hey, this camera is back in full working order. Nothing is actually damaged on it anymore other than the surface. I'm also going to see if I can resurface the camera to get all of these scuffs and paint scratches and gouges out of it and get it back to looking as it should. Thank you to everyone who subscribed recently. It's been pretty crazy to see the channel grow from literally nothing. This has been a dead channel where I've posted some previous projects. The dates for some of the most recent uploads show that they're a lot more recent than they actually were because they were sitting on their private for a while. So thank you for coming along with this. I did not plan this out. This wasn't a mastermind series that I pre-planned and pre-filmed everything and it's coming out late. Like, I'm doing this as I go. This is just for fun. I really appreciate you guys being interested. I would have loved to have seen a project like this, especially with the Cion before, so I knew a little bit what I was getting myself into. But again, thank y'all for subscribing. If you have any suggestions, advice, if you own a Cion and you have any footage that you'd like to share, there honestly isn't a lot of footage out there for the Cion. So I'm sure everyone would love to see it. So the next video you're gonna see from me is gonna be a test of skin tones under ideal lighting conditions, just so that we can see how pretty can this camera get. And we're also gonna be comparing recording internally versus recording externally. Recording externally would let me use SD cards or other cheaper media solutions like SSDs or anything like that. So stay tuned for that in about a week or two. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.